So I just wanted to cover this really quickly. This whole campaign that I've been using here, this Shadowdark campaign, I've been using the Shadowdark RPG Game Master, which is a GPT available uh, through ChatGPT. One of the questions I had after finishing the Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur using this as a GM, I asked about what other Shadowdark adventures you're able to run. And the GPT came back and mentioned, there's the Cursed Scroll series by the Arcane Library. Um, the initial ones here, 1 through 4. I'm looking forward to the new ones, by the way. Um, the longer campaign arcs, there's some things here. There's a Shadow Dark, the Black March, the Veins Beneath. So there are some other adventures that I may consider going on here, and also some one-shots. Now, I'm not familiar with these. I'm not sure if these are ones that were made up by the developer of the GPT. I'm not 100% sure. There's the Midnight Door, the Lantern Crypt. So I got some options there that I may pursue, depending on how I feel about continuing on. Because there definitely are some issues, I think, doing this. It's not the same as using a real game master. Throughout the whole thing, I was really questioning some of the roles. It's like I've never had such luck, where all the detections worked, all the attacks worked. There were a lot of modifiers being thrown around in there. Um, this thing will do custom adventures here. It mentions you can do a custom adventure, city-based. So I believe that I would even like to go as far as looking at some of the things that I already own, and seeing if I can import the data in just to play something that I've already got, adventure I may already have. So I can, it's given me different options here. One of the things that I asked about was experience, because normally, if you're familiar with Shadowdark, experience is kind of broken down according to how the game master sees fit. You're not really getting experience for slaying monsters like you would in 5th edition or some other role-playing games. It really has more to do about gaining treasure and things like that, and being awarded. It's really up to the game master as far as how much to award. And of course, experience levels work a lot differently too. You've got to get 10 experience points to move on to second level. And then once you're there, then it resets to 0, and then you start over again till you go to third level and so on. Um, and so I asked about, well, what kind of experience would you recommend giving out? And no, keeping in mind the fact that experience points are basically 0 to 10, it goes into this kind of an odd breakdown for the Spiral Broken, or, we just did the Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur. It says, breaking 5 seals and survived without total corruption, 500 experience points. Well, that's kind of irrelevant in Shadowdark, so I don't know where it's coming up with this. And then defeating the Scarlet Minotaur at its weakest moment. I'm sure, yeah, there's, I don't know how you go about it because there's not specific experience points assigned to creatures. Um, uncovering the nature of the spiral of the Crimson Ring. I can see where you might get experience for some of these items that obviously the total it's coming up with is like 1,800 experience points per character. Well, really, that is not even per Shadow Dark rules. That's not even, I mean, that would be, what level would that even be? That would, they're saying that, additional XP based upon play style, you could add another 500 per character and so on. So they're coming up with total XP per character suggested is 2,300. And then they're trying to explain, oh, the XP threshold is like, that would comfortably take a Shadow Dark party of level 1 adventurers to level 3 or high, or slightly higher if they began at level 2. And then it's got this, reference here saying, oh, level 1 to 2, 100 experience points. No, it's actually 10. And then I see what they're doing here, but then I believe when you go between second and third level, you have to gain, I believe it's 20 experience points more. I believe that's what it is. I have to look at the table for sure, but it's definitely not in the hundreds. So they're saying, oh yeah, if you start at level 1, you'd be about level 4. Well, I updated the characters to level 2, basically, figuring I think they at least earned um, probably 10 experience points through the one adventure. That may be a little bit too generous, honestly. And then I'd like to keep the same characters, so I talked to the GPT about that. And I did not go with a level 4. I'm not going to move these characters to level 4. So I said I'll make all the characters from the Company of Red Iron at level 2 now. And so perfect. And we went on and discussed this. And this is another area where the GPT broke down. It said at level 2, all characters gain +1 talent. Okay. Now, and the 1d8 hit point, that's really only related to a fighter. I mean, if you're like a thief or, in the case of Sarwin, wizard, a magic user, you're talking a different, different hit dice. It's not 1d8. That's only if you're a fighter, basically. Um, yeah, and then updating gear slots. I don't recall there being a rule in Shadowdark about updating gear slots. And now that only might be true if you've gained more items, then definitely you're losing some gear slots. Or if you're selling items, update your gear slots. You don't gain gear slots just because you go up in level. That's not how that works. But then they're talking about the fighters gaining +1 talent, and I went back and referred to the rules, and I'm like, okay, let's just talk about all these suggestions here. And I said, and this was my answer back. I said, hey, there's no new talents until level 3. It's basically every odd level if you look at the Shadowdark rules. And then at least the GPT came back and said, oh, you're absolutely right. And thank you for the sharp eye. In Shadowdark RPG, characters only gain a new talent every odd level 3, 5, 7, etc. Why the GPT didn't know that from the start is confusing. It's almost like this GPT was jumping out of Shadowdark and going into something else. Like maybe was it jumping back over into 5th edition? I have no idea what was happening, but you got to be aware of things like that. I do appreciate the fact of having some of these GPTs just to play around with. If you're somebody that suffers with a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, whatever, this might be a good way to kind of get your feet wet. I'm not knocking this at all, but you do have to be aware that there are some issues. Definitely some issues here. So this kind of blew me away here. Adding +1 to gear slots. I've opened the rule book and looked at it, and I admit I'm not the greatest rule expert, but I have read the rules, and I don't recall there being a +1 to gear slots. I did not do that. Um, I don't understand that. So maybe somebody can comment and explain that one to me if they'd like to. But I basically have gone through and tried to update this. So anyhow, do I have the information on this Game Master again? Okay, I want to make sure I mention it again. And it's actually good. I'm not trying to be overly critical. It's got some good ratings here. Have I rated this? Don't recall. I have to double check and see if I have. But it's a Shadowdark RPG Game Master. It's by Kevin Oliver. Shadowdark Game Master for a beginner-friendly campaign. And actually, for what it is, it's very nice. I do like it a lot. Now I could start another one just by clicking on it, or I really should just go back to the one I've already been in. So, I ended up finally going through and correcting this, and oh, I guess that expired already, but I've updated everybody to level 2, and I rolled the hit points myself. So going forward, if we do some further adventures, um, we may use this, and I may just jump over to the Solo Dark rulebook. You got to go to the Arcane Library and check it out. The the solo rule book, I believe that is free for the PDF. I actually, paid for a printed copy so that I could have it available. And I've been using the basic starter set, and then recently bought the rules, the full Shadow Dark rules. So I'm really looking forward to giving the solo Dark rules a try. And maybe taking one or two characters out of the Company of Red Iron, or maybe rolling some new ones and using the solo dark. rules for solo play. I think that would actually be a fun way to go and kind of maybe eliminate some of the oddities of using the ChatGPT version. All right, that's really all I've got for now. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Would you guys like to see some other adventures? I'm definitely willing to put some other adventures out here. And anything you might be looking for in particular, let me know. We'll see you in the next video.